I'm Katie Kiefer. I'm a digital director with Food and Water Watch. I'm going to share some much needed good news in this time that we're in on an advocacy win that we had this year and how engaging networks played a big role in our win. So first, a little bit of background on us. So at Food and Water Watch, we are working to build a future where everyone has access to safe food, clean water, and a livable climate. We're celebrating our 20th anniversary year this year. Um, And over our history, we've partnered with communities across the country to win real meaningful wins for our health and environment. And we are celebrating our 1-year anniversary with Engaging Networks. Very exciting. We were at this conference 1 year ago, really trying to take it all in. We had just launched our system. And we were trying to absorb as much as we could. And so it's great to be back with a year under our belt. And what a year it has been. We have been fighting Trump at every turn here. We, like so many organizations, have been working to protect our rights, our environment, our neighbors, our families, and we really had to kick our work into high gear this year with everything that has been thrown at us in Trump's second term. So just to name a few of those things, so Trump has been gutting the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency staff and budget. The staff has been reduced by 23%. He wants to cut another $2 billion in funding in the 2026 appropriations bill. He's attempting to weaken protections and eliminate protections that keep our communities safe that we've been working hard for over the years. And he's weakening guardrails on on polluters in the interest of increasing profits at the expense of our public health. He wants to make polluters richer while the rest of us get sick. And so, one of those protections that is under threat is the lead out of water rule. Technically, the lead and copper rule improvements, or LCRI. This was a Biden-era rule that was adopted in October of last year, and it was an improvement on an existing rule. And so it requires lead service line replacement for most communities over the next decade. And these are pipes that connect individual properties, homes, schools, businesses to the water service, the water main line in the street. And lead service lines are the main source of lead in drinking water. So there's no safe level of lead in drinking water. It's especially dangerous for children. Exposure can lead to developmental disorders, damage to the nervous system, and blood cells, and more. The EPA estimates that today 9 million homes are still served with lead service lines. That means families are being exposed to lead in their drinking water every single day. In 2021, out of 1 million US children tested, half had detectable levels of lead in their blood. And lead exposure is much more likely for poorer children and children of color. So Republican leadership in Congress indicated that it was a priority to repeal the lead out of water rule using the Congressional Review Act. The Congressional Review Act, or CRA, is a law that allows Congress to overrule federal agency regulations within a certain time period with a simple majority vote. So there was a countdown clock that started at the start of session this year. So there was 60 days that they could use this law to overrule the lead out of water rule. One of the significant threats with the Congressional Review Act is that the next administration, the same agency, can't enact a substantially similar rule in the future. And so this would have been a really big threat because the next administration couldn't come back and put this requirement back in place. So early on in January, we knew this was going to come up. So we decided to take this on as a priority for us to stop this effort to roll back the lead out of water rule. And whenever we take on any effort, we have the same approach. We want to set out our goal, our strategy, and our tactics. So our goal here was to defend the lead out of water rule and protect children in particular from lead in their water. The strategy that we had was to pressure vulnerable members of Congress to delay a vote on this Congressional Review Act, using the Congressional Review Act. So we only needed 2 to 3 Republican members to peel off and do the right thing to vote to protect this rule. And we knew we only had this 60-day window that they could do this. And then we planned to mobilize our members for our tactics to engage through messages, phone calls, in-person actions. We also wanted to get local press coverage as much as we could to really elevate the profile of what was going on. So in terms of tactics, we used emails to mobilize our list of supporters. We've got a little under 300,000 supporters on our email list. We used email to target actions and engaging networks. So we had messages delivered directly to members of Congress. And then we were getting calls into key congressional targets. So we would do specific asks where it made sense for different targets. And we would do, we'd also have kind of blanket asks, an autoresponder or thank you email on our action pages as well. And then offline, we had in-district rallies at offices across the country. We had volunteer-led letter deliveries, and we had local press coverage as well, trying to get, again, coverage in some of these papers where these vulnerable members were. So next, I'm going to talk a little bit about our email schedule and the tactics that we used in a little bit more detail. So we sent our first advocacy action right after Trump was inaugurated in January on the let out of water rule, and had a high action rate for us, about 2.4%. I mentioned this is our first action. We actually had kind of primed our list a bit. We did a survey when Trump was elected and earlier in January with kind of the threats that we were expecting, and this was one of those. And so kind of, again, use that survey engagement tactic to get folks primed to take action on this. And I also want to mention that we are using the new email builder. It was not new for us. It was the only system we had used. And so that's worked really well for us. And so we sent a kicker then a few days later, just a shorter email above the original email. We do this pretty frequently. A couple things I wanted to point out on this one. We had some personalization here. We try to name legislators as much as we can in our emails. We find that it helps our rates when folks are seeing the name of their member of Congress right in the email. This action went to both House and Senate, but since the House was where we knew we were going to be able to stop this bill, we really honed in and focused on members of Congress and our messaging to our members, our House members. And just flagging here as well, our kicker block here, so we have the information from the email that was initially sent and pulling in the person's name and email again, and then that original email that they got was right underneath that. And so we knew then that they were going to have to reintroduce the resolution that was going to repeal the let out of water rule. And so we were ready with the rapid response ask when that happened. So this was another opportunity to go back to our list with the same action. So it's not a new advocacy page, it was the same action. We said, okay, now we have the resolution. This has been introduced. It's time to take another action. So we wanted them to send another action to their member. We just updated the resolution number in the text there. And this one, since we're sending the same action again, we did some conditional content here with just a segment on the to another variant on the email, one to action takers and one to the fallback group. So people who took the action already had a special note in the email saying, can you take another message? So we want to acknowledge and thank them for having taken the action the first time and give them a custom version. So we typically do a small fundraising effort around World Water Day, which is toward the end of March. So we led with an advocacy ask on this campaign and redirected to our World Water Day fundraising page with a match offer. So similar, there's just a question around activists converting to donors. So we try whenever we have a fundraising effort to also include some advocacy, and we have good success with that. So we had a high after action donation rate for us, 0.7% with this one. So at the same time, while all that is, we're doing that online, we had a lot of actions happening in person. So we had, we're funneling people to take offline actions through our online outreach. So we had actions at in-district offices across the country. We also started a weekly resist text group. So we would recruit for folks to sign up for our text list at in-person events and on our online forums, our action forums. So we send urgent actions. I think we just hit our 30th week of resist text. So every week we're sending out those actions to folks. And so everything we're doing online with our list is building and supporting our offline efforts. We were delivering those online petition signatures in person, asking folks to make calls after they take action, volunteer and help ramp up those advocacy efforts. So one important detail that I haven't mentioned yet is that I happen to live in one of the districts of those vulnerable members of Congress that we were targeting. Ryan McKenzie, who had just won as a freshman representative, and he just squeaked out a win against the incumbent Democrat Susan Wild in my district. And so I'm from this community. We had lead in our drinking fountains in our school, so it hits close to home. And I happen to live down the street from his office, and so we're in January trying to figure out, okay, how do we approach this administration and all the threats that we're up against. And so we pulled together a press conference and rally outside of his office in January when this first came up. We didn't really have a presence in this district before. I happened to live there because I'm from there, but most of the people in these pictures are my family that I asked very nicely to come out to this action with us. But we got a lot of good press, local press. We met with his staff there. We noticed that his staff has a comment in the article that was in the front page of the local paper, and they actually corrected the quote after the fact. So we knew they were paying attention. They were concerned about how this was looking, that we were calling this member out for not standing up for getting lead out of our water. And so we would go frequently to Mackenzie's office whenever Congress was in recess. That's a good time to potentially run into the member at their office. We didn't expect that to happen, but we happened to go. Myself and 2 volunteers were there one day, and we were expecting to get blown off by the staff like we typically did. And he walks out into the main lobby. He had been in the office and heard we were coming and decided to speak with us. He said he had seen the press coverage and heard from us and wanted to talk about this issue with us. So we talked for about 20 minutes. He wouldn't publicly go on record with the position, but he said he had done research after he'd seen us at his office and didn't think it was a good idea for Republican leadership to repeal this rule. And he said he spoke to their leadership about it, and we kind of agreed that it would be best interest for all of us for this just not to come up for a vote, right? We just want to delay this until it's kind of past the time frame to do it. He doesn't need to be on record with a vote that would be unpopular, and if it doesn't come up for a vote, then they can't use this CRA to repeal it. So there was a funny moment where he actually asked me what the time frame was. Like, he didn't actually know what the window was for the Congressional Review Act. So it was kind of helpful to really have that in-depth conversation with him about it. We had another Republican member of Congress in New York, Mike Lawler, who actually publicly came out to oppose the rule. So that was the work we were doing that kind of blended the work we were doing advocacy online with being able to have some interface with the members of Congress in district. So on May 8th, the clock ran out on the Congressional Review Act window, which protected the lead out of water rule from being repealed using this tactic. So that was great news. We didn't quite win just yet, though. That was one win, or one key piece of it, but there's a little bit more to the story. So more on that in just a second. But first, to celebrate the CRA, when we did, this May 8th was the official date when they could no longer use the CRA to revoke the lead out of water rule. And again, this was our biggest concern because that would prevent a substantially similar rule from being enacted in the future. And so whenever we have a win like that, we want to let folks know about it. So we try to send a victory announcement about that, letting folks know. Typically, we'll do a note, again, similarly with action takers and non-action takers, letting folks know that their messages did this if they took an action themselves. So then a couple bonus threats. So while this battle was playing out in Congress, we knew that there were other threats to the lead out of water rule. There's an industry lawsuit that was brought up against the rule, and Trump's EPA has to make a decision on whether they're going to defend the rule in court. And so we generated over 20,000 email to target messages to Lee Zeldin, the administrator of the EPA. And we learned over the summer that EPA will defend the rule in court. So that was another really exciting win here. And we're still cautiously optimistic here. They could still try to undermine it or delay it in some way. But it was really good news because they could have just decided that they wouldn't defend it at all. If this happens, there are other legal pathways around the Clean Water Act that we could still protect the rule. But this was kind of a bonus win that we weren't expecting because we thought they were going to do the wrong thing here. And then another threat here is around funding. So the lead out of water rule handles the regulatory piece, right, requiring lead service line removal. The funding is a separate piece of it. And so the funding has been under threat to replace lead service lines. So there was a vote just recently on a key committee, and they voted to revoke already approved funding for lead service line removal. And so there were Democrats and Republicans that voted for this. And we think Democrats weren't thinking this would end up in the final version, but it was a compromise. And so we really wanted to call them out for that, the whole committee, and say you can't use clean water and lead exposure as a bargaining chip. So we used what we call a toast roast action. This is like a thanks spank, but we thought that term was a little awkward, so we did a whole vote with our staff. So you're welcome to use this. I also can share the list of other votes that we had. But this is where we send a multi-step action where we send folks who voted the right way a thank you message or a certain message, and folks who what you want to hold accountable a different message. And so we use that, and then the current status of this is that we're monitoring this during the current spending bill fight, but we think that we'll be able to protect this funding for lead pipe removal. A little bit more just on the process of setting that up. So this is what the back end looks like here. In this case, this message went to all senators, but there was a specific custom message for those senators who voted yes in committee, which was pretty much everyone or most of them. But then the default is just a message to the rest of the Senate saying, protect lead funding when it comes up, lead removal funding when it comes up before you. So one more bonus win to end on. Similar to the lead out of water rule, we're facing the same threat to some regulations around PFAS, which are toxic forever chemicals that are in about half the municipalities in the U.S. And so there's this polluter pay rule, which would hold PFAS chemical manufacturers responsible, be the first step to holding them responsible for cleaning up the mess of PFAS in our environment, our system, our water systems. And so Trump's EPA had already rolled back some limits on PFAS, so we're still on them about some of that that Biden had put into place, but it's also under threat under a similar lawsuit. So we found out in September that the EPA would defend the PFAS polluter pay rules in court. So similar to the lead out of water rule, we had kind of paired those actions together. The action page had both of those on there. So similarly, got over 20,000 messages into the EPA, and we've been hounding them on that. And so again, this is the first step to regulating PFAS pollution as well. So those are some of our recent wins. And yeah, I don't think we have much time, but wanted to put my info here again if you are interested in any more detail on those tactics. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much. That was so energizing, and what an important example to run through. Thank you. We do have a few questions on here before we take a break at 10:30, so I'll just start off with the votes. The question was, what was the action rate of the kicker? How did it compare to the original? I don't know if you have that on you, but
yeah, I think I put in the slide we had like 2,000 more actions on it. Typically, when we do kickers, they're not going to have as high of an action rate as the original because you're sending to everyone else who hasn't done it yet. So I don't have the action rate off the top of my head, but usually it's a little bit lower, but we saw a good number of actions on it still. Yeah, it was about half, I think, of the original email that we sent.
Okay. How do you ensure to center those communities that are most likely to be affected by toxic water in both messaging, but also ensuring to digitally reach activists from those districts? Do you segment by zip code or other demographic data to the supporters on file?
Yeah, I mean, in our case, when we're looking at segmentation, a lot of it's around who are I talked about our goal, strategy, and tactics, right? The folks who are going to be able to who we need to vote the right way, right? So in my district, right, I know I had the numbers to communicate with our legislator on how many people in our community were affected by lead service lines, and could talk about that in our district and in Pennsylvania. So we look at that in terms of the strategy of who we're trying to influence to vote the right way, typically. But it's a widespread issue across the country, so there's lots of ways to incorporate that.
What data process did you use for the person's rep to appear in the email?
Yeah, so we just use the insert user supporter data field, and then U.S. House member was the way we did that, just right built into the email tool. And I don't know if there's any special setup we have around the political mapping, but that's how we have our data pull into our emails. Yeah.
And then I'll just end with this one. And I know it's been a topic that a few of us have been talking about. So for your EPA actions, how are you handling the regulations.gov API integration getting axed in order to effectively submit your supporters' comments? And I've heard there's some buzz or some advancements in what we can do about that, but I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, in this case, actually check the action page. It had been a little while, but we just had a custom target to Lee Zeldin's email address in this case. This wasn't a comment period, so we were just getting his inbox flooded with emails in this case. But on the recent regulatory actions that we've done that. We've sent it to him. I think his secretary. I think we'll use whatever email addresses we can. There's also another email address we had found to submit comments through regulatory email, which I can dig up at some point, and then we will also submit as a bulk comment on regulations.gov directly. So we're trying to just make it way more annoying for them now that they've taken away the API access. So we're just trying to hit them as many places as we can. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you very much. We'll close it there. Thanks so much for your presentation.
Thanks, Mike.